Like I said, I wanted something, I was itching for something manual, little fun toy, you know? And I didn't really want another Civic or an Integra because I just didn't want to go through that whole transition of going back to getting in trouble. So I was looking around and then I came across this thing, and I always liked the 5-speed all-wheel drive CRVs, you know?
So tell us, what was your vision for it once you, I guess, put the coilovers and the Anki wheels, and then how did that kind of go about?
So my vision for it, I'm not trying to build it for competition or anything. I'm not trying to build it as a 100%, you know, show queen. I just wanted something fun, unique, something that you don't really see a lot, something that doesn't catch the eye too much. But it's funny because every time I go to car meets and stuff, especially when I go to like the non-Honda car meets, people wonder what it is. Like they don't know what kind of a Honda it is because they're, you know, from the factory in the US, it looks like a little compact SUV. It's got the spare tire on the tailgate and everything. I wanted it to look more like a wagon, not so much like a SUV. And I mean, it's small enough to pull it off with all the large cars nowadays. So that's why with the rear tailgate with the spare tire being gone, you know, it gives it a more of a subtle kind of wagon look versus like a bulkier SUV. And from the factory in the US, the bumpers are actually black plastic, kind of like the flares and the moldings, and the full mark bumpers with the painted color match theme going on. I think it gives it more of a, you know, city looking vibe.
So let's start with the front end. What do you got going on?
So the front end has the full mark front bumper with the factory JDM fog lights. The headlights are actually depot headlights that have been retrofitted by Evil Headlights. So we're using the Mini D2S, 6K bulbs. The grill is actually the factory US grill. We got the little Mugen bolts with the JDM to USDM license plate converter on the front end.
How hard was it to find these parts?
It was a little bit of a mission. I found a guy on Instagram, luckily. I think he goes by Leo Very. He imports parts from Puerto Rico, I believe it is.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he does a lot of like the EK SIR bumpers, the full mark conversions and things like that. So I was lucky enough, excuse me, to find him and have him import all the parts. The shitty thing is, during the shipment, actually, all 3 of the parts got damaged. So my front bumper was torn, the rear bumper was torn, and my lift gate, they dropped it and it was all bent up. So after receiving the parts, I had to do some body work to bring those back to life and then repaint them. And you know, I'm very fortunate that I got to save the parts and still use them after what they went through.
Right. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's disappointing, but that's what you get when you're shipping parts.
Exactly. I mean, all the way from across the world, you know.
That's crazy. Now tell us about your suspension pieces. What do you have going on?
So the car's on coilovers right now, Fortune Auto coilovers. In the front we have the MPC drop forks. We have the PCI front upper control arms off of an EK with the spherical ends instead of the rubber bushings. The whole suspension's been redone on the car. The tie rods are OEM inner and outer Honda tie rods. The lower control arms are OEM Honda control arm. All the ball joints are new. The brakes are a custom brake kit made by Brian from Fast Brakes. The front brakes are 6-piston wheelwoods with a 330mm rotor. And that's actually a kit off of an Integra Type R, because the CRVs, the first-gen CRVs, they use the same calipers and the rotors as the Type R. The only difference is the center hub on the CRV has a larger bore, so the rotor had to be machined out in order for it to work, you know, on this knuckle and on this hub. The rear end is.
Did you say this was supposed to be a daily?
It was.
And then you're not trying to do like any performance or competition?
Yeah, the rear brakes are again just a one-off custom kit made by Brian again. I actually don't know anyone else out there with a CRV that has a dual caliper rear setup. And the reason why I went with a dual caliper is because I wanted a bigger caliper in the back for the primary braking, the hydraulic. So the back also has a 330mm rotor with a 4-piston wheel width caliper. But as you can see, it has a secondary mechanical caliper just specifically for the handbrake. And it's actually made it to the factory e-brake lever. So inside the car, it's all 100% OEM. We had some custom cables that'll go attached to those guys, and it works just like factory. So that little caliper is strictly just for the handbrake, while the 4-piston is the hydraulic main braking caliper. This was the most pain in the ass installation, and the whole process of it was the most pain in the ass part about this car. I mean, it was over like a 2-day labor time to do that conversion. Yeah, definitely worth it to me, man. I mean, you know, I'm back of some nice C28s. I didn't really want to see the rusted drum. So a disc conversion was a must for the rear end of this car. And unfortunately, you can't really use like a disc conversion off a Civic or an Integra because it's an all-wheel drive model. So the hub in the middle actually has to accept the axle shaft. If it was a front-wheel drive model, you could have done one off of like a Civic or an Integra using the hub off that. As far as suspension in the back goes, we have the PCI spherical trailing arm kit, which was never designed for the CRV trailing arm. We custom fabricated it. It's the one off of an EK, so it has to be a lot of cutting and drilling and measurements and all that, but made a world of difference. We have the PCI toe arms in the back, the PCI rear upper arm. The lower control arms are still stock.